Hi guys. Um, I got the strength to come on here today to tell my story. I have been watching people talk about diamond painting, about mental health and other things. And I have been telling you guys a little bit about what's going on with me and why I started a channel and stuff like that. So, if you can take the time to listen to my story, I think you will be grateful in the end because I think it can help a lot of people because it took me 56 years to come on here and tell my story and to be strong enough to tell my story. Some people may think I'm crazy, some people may think this is great, some people will say, who cares? But to me, I feel this is important. So, my name is Lori. I'm Shy Chick Crafters. You know, I have a YouTube channel. Here I am. I've been telling everybody that my health problems have been progressing. Um, let's start from the beginning. This is hard because I don't know how to word things. This is probably why I'm in the position I'm in today, is because of how it all started. So it may be a little bit long, so get some coffee, get something to eat, get something to do, craft, diamond paint, do whatever, or click off. But I feel this may be an educational and a life-saving video. I don't know. This is all my opinion. I'm not an expert at anything, but this is what I am learning. When I was a child, I grew up in a very, very abusive home. My mom was married before she had me. Her first husband died at the age of 30 of a terrible disease. He knew he had a disease, but he still married my mom because he loved her. They ended up having 3 kids, which are my brothers. I had 3 brothers. Well, he ended up dying. My mom couldn't handle it. So what happened, she left my brothers behind with my grandmother, which was her mom, and my uncle, which is her brother, raised 3 boys. Well, my mom became an alcoholic, and because she ended up with a lot of money from, from her first husband's death. And then she met my father. And the only reason why I knew this, because my mom finally told me before she passed away about everything. But I already knew because I wasn't a stupid child. Honestly, I wasn't. I was very smart. I was very good at what I was seeing, what my surroundings were. But my dad was a womanizer. And he was a very, very horrible, horrible man. And it's sad to say things like this about your parents. But anyways, he met my mom. Till this day, I have it in my head. I think I was either kidnapped or I'm this strange person that was put on earth. I don't know. I don't know what the reason why I'm here. But this is hard to talk about. But I used to see my mom get beaten every single day. I used to see females come to my house and tell my mom to leave her own home because they were seeing my father. I used to see my mom get hauled away all the time by the ambulance, and I was tossed from house to house around our neighborhood. You know, my dad made good money. We weren't a poor family, not at all. But this was, I was born in 67. So this was, back then. People didn't really get involved. I don't think domestic violence was aware. Back then cops, they didn't care about, females getting beaten by their husband, boyfriend, whatever. So I was always judged from what was going on of what my parents were doing to themselves. So I was caught in the middle. And for being a 5-year old at the time when I started realizing what was going, what people were saying when I started going to school and everything at 6 years old, parents wouldn't let me play with their kids. They used to call me the devil child. They used to blame me for my parents. They used to tell me it was my fault that my parents got a divorce and that what they did was because of me. I didn't do it. I'm finally realizing that now after 56 years. But back then I didn't. So, my parents weren't married very long. My mom ended up in a mental institution because of what my father did to her. He took all her money, took her home, took her boat, ruined her life, and he ended up taking me. I was petrified of my dad. I used to come home every day after school to an empty house, not knowing what time my dad was coming home, when my next meal was, what next girl was coming to the house. I had one friend at the time. She was considered my best friend because she lived across the street. So they knew my family, they knew me, and they kind of knew what was going on, but back then people didn't talk about it. So this is where mental illness comes in. This is what I think starts, is something from this. And back then people didn't understand that. So my dad should have never had me. My mom should have never had me. She left 3 boys behind, and I don't know why they had me. I don't know if I was a mistake or what. She used to talk about her first husband always wanted a little girl. He died a year before. I was almost a year and a half, 2 years before, so I'm kind of putting the numbers together. Did my mom, because it was quite weird how fast my mom's first husband passed away, because I visit his grave over here in upstate New York, and that's where my mom is buried. She's buried with her first husband, because she met my father right away. They met in a bar. So I came home to an empty house every day. I was always by myself. What I remember is, because I have a lot of blockage, because I don't want to remember. But I remember the things like I used to ride my bike around, because it was one way in, one way out where we used to live. So you could ride your bike around the big circle, around the big circle and stuff. I used to love being outside. And I had a dog. My dog was my best friend. He was always there for me. He used to wait every day. He knew when I was coming home from school. And he would be sitting there until I got off that bus. And every chance I had to be out of this house, I took the opportunity. I used to run away. I started running away at 6 years old. I remember the cops looking for me. I remember hiding in the woods and everything else because I didn't want to be home. I remember when I used to ride in the car with my dad, I used to look out the window, and as we drove by houses, I always used to look inside them and wonder what it would have been like to have a rural family. So I apologize that I'm crying, but this takes a lot of courage to speak up, because I had a lot of people texting me and saying things, and I just want to get this story out, and then I'm ending it, because this is not what my YouTube channel was supposed to be like. But the more channels I watched when I got back at diamond painting, it made me realize that this needs to be talked more so these doctors can understand what mental illness is all about. Because as I was a child, we weren't allowed to talk. We weren't allowed to say our feelings. We had to keep everything inside. We weren't allowed to hug. We weren't allowed to say I love you. We couldn't even kiss each other. Nothing. And then, you know, the way my dad was, I was out until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning every night on a school night, and then having to wake up in the morning and go to school. I was a terrible student. I had, first of all, I had a learning disability because I think my mom drank while she was carrying me. So that's why when I was born, I was born during a robbery. My parents owned a little store, and my mom got robbed that night, and she ended up having me. So, I ended up not being able to talk and walk and stuff like that. I had hearing problems and everything. I was a very sick child. So, once my dad came home that day saying he had custody of me, I was shaking so bad. But I had to put on a brave face and give my dad a hug and say, "Oh, nice." I couldn't tell him how I felt because I knew a beating would come. If I said anything out of line, or if I said any kind of feelings, or if I expressed anything, he would beat the shit out of me. So I was judged from the get-go without giving an opportunity to tell people what was really going on. So I don't want to make this video too long, but as the years went on, things just got worse and worse. My dad met this other girl that ended up having 3 daughters. They used to come on the weekend, and I remember my dad treating them so well. He used to do everything for them, but he didn't want nothing to do with me. And I just didn't understand. My uncle at the time was trying to get custody of me back then because I used to be able to see. My getaway was the only thing that kept me going as a child was I got to see my grandmother every weekend. My dad would drive me across the lake on his boat and bring me to upstate New York. And my grandmother used to take care of me. Between my grandmother and my uncle and my 3 brothers, we were a close family. That was my family. That little family was my family. But then it all got taken away from me because once my dad knew what they were up to, he yanked it away from me. He didn't want me to have a life. I don't understand what I did for him to be this mean to me. So when he was dating this woman who had 3 children, and he did, was doing everything for him, one night we used to take the girls home to their father because their father had custody of them, and my dad's girlfriend didn't. So one night we dropped them off, and maybe 2, 3 hours later we got a phone call, and I was still young. I was probably about 10 at this time. Well, the youngest, there's 3 of them, so the oldest and the youngest went for a walk. Well, they got hit by a drunk driver. The youngest got Peggy, her name was Peggy, ended up with a broken arm and everything. So when my dad was talking to them and they were explaining whatever happened, my dad said, "Do you want to get on the phone and talk to them?" And I said, "Sure." And the first thing that came out of those girls' mouths was, "I bet you wish we died so your dad could love you." What 10-year-old would like to hear something like that? So, just imagine, as the years went on, what I went through. My dad went through girlfriends. He was a womanizer. He took every time he cleaned them out, he moved on to the next. There was this one woman. Her name was Barbara. She ended up being my stepmother before he passed away. She chased him for 35 years. She was the first one that kept coming to my house, my mother's house, and telling my mom that she was going to end up with my father and that she needed to leave her house and that she was going to lose everything. Okay? But my dad used her just as bad, but she kept falling for him. I don't know why. He wasn't a good person. So I don't understand how all these females liked this guy. So the only thing about her though was when things got bad and my dad had no one to take care of me or didn't know what to do with me, he used to bring me over to her house. And the only thing that she did good for me was feed me and give me a warm bed to sleep in. You know, that was about the nicest thing that someone did as I was growing up. So, this is how mental illness comes in. Because people don't know a person. They judge you before they get to know you. Some people may look funny, some people may act funny, but they don't know why. So they judge you before they get to know why. You know, you act this way, or maybe your expressions are, your expressions are wrong, or maybe the way you talk, or maybe because you're too quiet, or you're doing this wrong. It's hard to explain because it's hard for me to explain how I want it to come out, because this is why I had problems getting help, because I couldn't express my feelings because I was so petrified. And with everything that happened during my childhood, every time I tried to tell my story, or if something bad happened to me, I was called a liar, or I was telling stories. I was molested by my uncle, one of my uncles on my dad's side. I mean, on my dad's side, that family was bad. It was really bad. My mom's side was good, but it was a small family. They were a small Italian family. But my grandmother kept what family together. She was the glue to the family. I love my grandmother. She was the best thing that I ever had in my life. My grandfather, I knew very little, but he loved me. But he passed away young too. So my grandmother raised my half-brothers and my uncle. But the thing that was wrong on my mother's side was that money was important. Not love. Money. You had to be successful in life. My uncle pushed that so hard. He made it where if you didn't do well, or you didn't act a certain way, he would hold that against you. If you talked back, he would hold that against you. And my uncle got mad at me one weekend because he came to get me to bring me back home to my dad. And it was early because I stayed from Friday to Sunday, but he came and grabbed me on a Saturday. Well, I was upset because I didn't want to go home, And I told him I hated him. And ever since I said that, he disowned me. So I wasn't allowed to go back to my grandmother's. And so I lost touch with what was close to me. I lost it. So I became distant because everything that I loved left me. My mom left me. My brothers left me. My grandmother left me. My uncle left me. So I raised myself. I didn't have friends in school because I walked funny. I talked funny. I didn't have the greatest clothes because my dad didn't think I was worth wearing nice clothes and stuff. He just, he was just horrible. So I went through school like that. Well, as time went on, my mom ended up out of the mental institution. To just go back a little bit, she ended up out of the mental institution and she got visitation, but she was dating the wrong guys. They were abusive. I saw guys beat her left and right. And my dad, put a stop to that. Because one night I was at my mom's apartment and I woke up. My pillow was full of blood. And I panicked and I couldn't find my mom. I didn't know where my mom was. So I called my dad and I said, Dad, I'm bleeding all over the place. My nose is really, really big. My pillow's full of blood. I can't find my mom. So he came, he found my mom. She was at another apartment, partying away still. Because, when she got out of the mental institution, she kept on drinking, doing whatever. And he brought me to the hospital, and it was, I had to have my nose cauterized and stuff like that. So he put a stop for me seeing my mom. So I didn't see my mom anymore. So finally, as life went on, this one girl ended up dating my dad again. Because, like I said, he kept going back and forth to Barb and then to other females. And then so this one other woman, Shirley, he dated, came back. And I remember this night so well. My dad used to bowl every Monday night. So I used to hang out the bowling alley at all hours of the night. And then come home to 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, Shirley showed up at the bowling alley. And she said, Lori, come here. I think I was 15, 14. No, I was about 14 at the time. Maybe younger, I can't remember. She says, I found your mom. She says, come with me. She says, I'm taking you to your mom. So I went out to the parking lot. She said, get in the car, get in the car. So I got in the car. Oh, here comes my dad. My dad goes, where are you going? And Shirley says, I'm taking her out away from you. You don't deserve to have her. Enough is enough. And he got so angry. And he scared the living shit out of me. He said, get out of that car. He said, get out. But he said worse things than that. So I got out of the car. Well, I got a beating of a lifetime. I ended up going to school with a broken wrist. I couldn't sit down. I had bruises on my face. Do you think the school cared? They didn't care. Then my mom got her life straightened out. And I think I was 16 at the time. She met a guy that was 20 years older than her. He got her clean. He married her. My mom ended up getting visitations again. She found me. So I used to visit her on weekends. And I was begging my mom, please, Mom, come take me. I said, can't you do something? Because the guy that she married never had kids. And once he heard what happened between my mom and then me, he fought for me. He started taking my dad to court. Well, one weekend, my mom and my dad came and picked me up. And, this was before that weekend. It was my birthday weekend, and my dad had a birthday party for me. I had my, a couple friends over and stuff like that. And the best friend that lived across the street came for the ride to drop me off at my mom to go see my mom for my birthday. And she says, she asked me a question, and I didn't answer it. I think it had something to do because we were going through court hearings at the time. And I think she said something like, are you going to be living with your mom soon? And I didn't kind of answer because I kind of knew that there was a chance that my mom was going to get custody of me. So, to make a long story short, when my dad dropped me off that weekend, I told my mom, I said, Dad was angry because of what my friend Kristen said. I said, I think he kind of knew something was going on, but wasn't quite sure what was going on. So when he came and picked me up that Sunday, he said, Lori, he said, what was that little conversation you had with your best friend that Friday when I was bringing you to your mom's? And, I kind of played dumb, and he said, it sounds like you're not going to be coming back one of these days. And I didn't want to answer him because I knew what was going to come next. Well, on the way home, he took me on a back road and he beat the living shit out of me again. When I got home, my dad left and I called my mom. I told my mom what happened. She got the police there. And since it was a custody battle, the police took this seriously this time because before, the police didn't care. And they brought me to my mom's and they put a restraining order against my dad or whatever they did. I don't know if there was restraining orders back then or what, but I didn't end up going back to see my dad. And then I remember the day we went to court, I was shaking so bad, and I was on the stand, and one of the questions that his lawyer said was, why do you think you need to live with your mom? Or why do you want to live with your mom? I couldn't get the words out because my dad was staring me down. That's how scared I was of my own father. And the only thing that came out of my mouth was, I think a daughter belongs with her mom. And I thought I ruined everything. Because like I said, I couldn't express my feelings. I couldn't tell my story. I didn't know how to tell my story. Because every time I told my story, I was a liar. Or I was scared I was going to get beaten. Or this was going to happen. Or that was going to happen. Well, my mom ended up winning the case. So I called my dad the devil. I finally got rid of the devil. And I ended up with my mom. So my last years of school was high school. And I ended up having my freedom. I had someone that loved me. I had a stepfather that loved me. It was hard for me to accept that I was free. So in a way, I kind of took advantage of it. I kind of became a wild child, but not a wild child. I got a job. I started, having sort of friends and be more social, because I was always a loner as a child. I didn't have anybody. So, there was points. There's so much to the story, but it would make this thing so bad. There was one time when I had an earache, and my dad was seeing Barb. And I kept complaining my ear was hurting. And that's when my mom was in and out of the picture. And I had a field trip. We went to Boston. We were camping in Boston and stuff. And I told my mom, I said, I was sick. And my dad wanted me gone. And he said, you're going on that field trip. And I kept saying, my ear really hurts. It was hurting for over a week. And Barb and my dad kept saying, it's just the earache. It's nothing. It's nothing. So when we went to Boston, I got really sick. So my mom rushed me to one of the emergency room, and they said, oh, it's an earache. They put drops in it and stuff. Well, on this field trip, we got to go see a Boston Red Sox game. Well, we were at the stadium, and I got really sick, and I passed out. So my mom brought me to the ear, throat, eye, or whatever. It was a really good hospital. Well, I had a tumor in my ear. I was suffering for almost 3 weeks and telling my dad what was going on, and then the hospital screwed up. The drops, activated this tumor or whatever, and they took it out, but my dad would have never done that. So that's how my dad was. So to get back to when my mom had custody of me, I was working, I was starting to meet new friends and stuff. Well, my mom couldn't drive at night, and they were having like a festival downtown, and they closed off the streets and everything. And I went down there. I said, okay, I didn't really want to go. Something told me not to go. I didn't want to go. Well, I met one of my friends that I worked with, and she was with this boy. And, well, he was my first boy, because I wasn't allowed to look at boys when I was young. If I talked to boys, looked at boys, or anything, my dad would freak out. Well, he ended up coming to the house, and he was actually a foster child. But he was kind of out on a date with my friend that I worked with. But they ended up coming to my house, and we hung out, and you know, I started dating him and stuff. And because he moved in, my mom took him in because he was in a bad situation, and my mom felt bad, so she took him in. I ended up getting pregnant because we weren't allowed to talk about sex or anything. Mom didn't even talk about it. You know, nobody gave you that, the birds and the bee talk or anything like that. So, as being a wild child and having my freedom and everything, I wasn't paying attention. And, you know, I had someone that finally loved me. I thought he loved me. And I ended up getting pregnant. And once he found out I was pregnant, he left me. You know, and I went through hell and back on that. And that's another story. But if you see the pattern, this is how mental health starts. Okay? Back then, in the 60s and 70s, you know, nobody really knew much about that. Being abused was normal back then. There was no DCYF or CPS or anything like that back then. Not that I know of, because they never came and rescued me. The only person that rescued me was, you know, girlfriends or neighbors or whatever. So, you know, I was even working at a restaurant when I was with Barb, my dad, who he ended up marrying. At 7 years old, I was working in a restaurant. I was busting tables and everything, you know. And that's, you know, that's how my life was. I mean, I was like an adult from 6 and on. But there's just so much story. But the reason why I'm telling you the story is because with my channel, I started paper crafting. And my past and my life has been horrible. I took after my mom. I met the wrong guys. I had children young. I wasn't perfect, but I tried. But the one thing I was proud of myself was I never gave up on my kids. I never gave them up. No matter what I did, I kept them. Even though I made mistakes, and I understand that now, my kids hold this against me. But they didn't understand why. I tried to explain to them as they got older why I was doing this and why I was doing that. And I was trying to get help, but the doctors, nobody wanted to listen. Nobody wanted to help. And it was just a battle with me. So I gave up. I thought I was still this piece of dirt person still on earth. Nobody still didn't care about me. Nobody wanted to help me get better. You know, I remember psychiatrists used to say, read a book, take a walk, you know, do this, do that, you know, but it was just, my state of mind was so damaged that reading a book wasn't solving me, you know. So I gave up. I didn't want to talk to nobody, so I just went with the emotional life. My life was just going through the motion. I just lived. I didn't really care. I didn't care about where I ended up. I didn't care about having a good job. I just went with the flow, you know. And then, you know, everybody kept saying, well, you got 2 kids, you ought to be married, da da da. Well, I didn't want to be married, but I ended up finding someone older. I thought he was a good guy. He seemed like he was a good guy. And I was working. He wasn't. So he used to take care of my kids while I was working. Well, I started seeing little signs, because of what I went through as a child. And I found out he was an alcoholic. And then I found out he was abusive to my kids. I didn't see it. My kids didn't tell me what was going on. And I had kids by this guy. By the time I had 2 kids by my very first love, and he ended up in jail, I was like, back then, like the first one that fought for domestic violence. I used to help domestic violent people. I used to be one of those people that people used to call at my home. I volunteered for things like that. I did do good things, but I didn't follow through with it because my life was a mess. So if my life was a mess, how could I help somebody else? But I did try to help. I tried to do my best. But out of all this whole story, people judge me, but I always portrayed myself as being a happy person. I didn't want people to see my misery. I didn't want people to feel pity for me, or I keep saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry," or "Oh God, I feel bad for you." I was tired of hearing that. I wanted someone to reach out and help me, and I just gave up all on that. But I still put a smile on my face every day. I always make sure I was kind to everybody. And I didn't like being mean, but my mental state got worse and worse. I started being snappy. My moods were up and down. I was all over the place. I started getting brave enough where I started snapping back and speaking my mind, but I would get beaten by my husband and stuff like that. My kids were getting beaten. And then CPS came in one day, and this is when I left my first husband because I didn't know. I went to work in the morning, and when I came home after work that day, I was waiting for my son to get off the bus, and I didn't see him get off the bus, and a CPS worker came, and they asked me, "Do you have a son named Jason?" Da-da-da. And they said, "Do you know what happened to him?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" They said, "Well, how was your son when he went to school?" I said, "Well, I got him up, got him dressed, but their stepfather put him on the bus." Well, they said he came to school with his mouth split open inside. And I'm like, "What?" And he said, "Well, first he said he fell off the bunk bed." And I'm like, "He never fell off the bunk bed, you know?" And then, my son was probably 8 years old at the time. Jason was 8, and Christopher they were a year and a half apart, so he was 9, 10. And I didn't know this abuse was going on when I had these kids. And once, things were showing up and stuff like that, and my kids, started opening up to me because they were petrified just like I was. When I was a kid, I didn't dare to say what was going on. So they were scared to come to me because of what their stepfather was saying to them. "Don't you ever tell your mom I'm doing this. Don't you ever say you say this or say that." But, he used to feed my kids and make them. One time my son puked in his own cereal, and my husband made him eat it. I didn't know any of this, and I felt so horrible as a parent because I didn't see the signs until it was too late. And I apologize the way I look because I took a shower. My face looks horrible. This is another story I'm going through with. I had my staples taken out. That's another time, but my life is still a wreck. But I left him. And then, I was dating, and then, I started drinking. I started doing things because I didn't know what to do anymore. I was just lost. I was like, I'm a rotten mother. I'm becoming my mother. I'm becoming my father. My mental state was out of control. My depression, my anxiety, my temper, everything was just out. So I became a party child. I became an alcoholic. I didn't even like alcohol. I hated alcohol. I couldn't stand the taste, but I would drink. I would drink and drink and drink and drink and drink. Until my mom took my son away from me. My oldest son, Chris. Jason stayed with me. My first 2 kids, which Chris was the oldest, he ended up going with my mom. Jason and my other son and my daughter, my two youngest that I had with my first husband, um, my other three kids stayed with me. And my oldest son wanted to be with my mom because my mom spoiled him. She tried to redo her life over with my son. She wanted to do a do-over because she was a horrible mom. You know, she left her three boys behind, and, you know, she left me behind with a horrible dad. But then she thought she kind of made it up, but she kind of didn't. You know what I mean? Because I went through a lot towards the end with her husband that was 20 years older. He ended up being nasty at the end, but it wasn't kind of his fault because he started the Alzheimer's and stuff, and you know how men get, they get that sexual craziness, whatever. So that's another story. But in the end, my mom ended up with my son, my oldest son. I kept my three youngest. I had my two boys and my daughter. But my ex-husband was fighting me to the core. He said, "Can I please keep Jimmy?" He said, "You keep Suzanne, I keep Jimmy." He said, "Until I get on my feet," because he never worked. He had jobs, but he was an alcoholic. He kept losing his job. Get paid on Friday, be drunk, didn't go to work on Monday. He had one good job that I got him into, and he lost it because of his alcohol. So he says, you know, I need help with welfare and all that stuff. And he says, "Just let me get on my feet," he said, "and then I'll give you Jimmy back." Well, you know, I kind of believed him. And with the way I was still, I wasn't, you know, fixed yet. I said, "Sure, take him." So I took Suzanne, I took my son Jason, and I moved on, you know, and I lived and did. And I made many, many, many mistakes. And then finally I met my second husband. To make that long story, I met him. And he changed my life. But we made mistakes together. We were both Virgos and stuff. He had his own issues, but he was a very good husband. He was a very good provider to my kids. He took my kids in like they were his own. I'm not even getting into all the details, but, you know, my kids never went without. They always had Christmas. They always had birthdays and everything else. You know, we did things that we weren't proud of, and we moved around a lot, but we finally straightened out. But that was kind of a little bit too late because when my middle son, Jason, got to be age 14, he got himself in trouble at school, you know, and it was a big mess. And we fought, and we had to go to court, and we started getting a bad reputation in town. And I kind of blame myself because I should have. I tried to be more of a friend to my kids than a parent, and that was my mistake because I wanted them to love me. They loved me, but they didn't love me, and I didn't want to be like my parents, and I just didn't know what kind of direction to be in. And with my mental state and everything, it's everything just, you know, didn't work out. So to make the story kind of shorten it down, everybody grew up. And when my kids were old enough to move out on their own, they made their mistakes. They used to shove my past in my face every single day. They used to make up stories saying what a horrible life they had, but they didn't. They really didn't. The only thing I could say that was horrible before I met my husband was I was bouncing around from men to men, and I was an alcoholic. But then I stopped because I met my husband. My husband is a good guy, but he had a temper, but he never hit my kids. He would yell at them. He would try to teach them because he's Portuguese Italian. So he was trying to make them, you know, try to get them on the right direction, but that wasn't working. And then my daughter, you know, so when my son got in trouble and everything, he ended up getting taken out. He ended up going to juvie, and after that, he ran away, and he ended up having a kid at a young age. Same thing with me. 16, had a kid. And he became his father, which was my first love. He became just like him. He was a womanizer. He had kids left and right, but he had a good heart. My son Jason is a very good boy. He is like me. He doesn't know how to love. He doesn't know how to express himself. He doesn't know what to do when things get tough. He doesn't know how to say the right things, or he does, but he doesn't. He's exactly like me in that kind of way, but he's exactly like his father. His father was in jail for like 15, 20 years. His father had like 20 kids. This is my first love. To bring everything up to date, they respect their father more than they respect me. And I don't understand why. Their father made more mistakes than I did. I didn't give up on them. Their father did. And this put me in more of a depression, anxiety, PTSD, whatever you call it, and everything else. And it made me crazy because it's like, God damn, I wasn't loved as a child. My own kids don't love me. They shove things in my face even though they're doing their own mistakes that are worse than mine were. They got into drugs, they did a lot of things, but I stood behind them. I was there no matter what. Until this day, now with me being sick and everything, my daughter won't talk to me. Jason is Jason. He just don't want the drama. He don't want to be involved. He just got his own problems. And my son, I moved up here 10 years ago to take care of my mom because my mom raised my son, my oldest son, Chris. And she spoiled the hell out of him. And that's why I think he's the way he is, because he got everything he wanted. He could have had the best of life. Because my uncle was going to put him through college. He was going to leave him money because my uncle was rich. He ran the family. But my son made a mistake when he was with my mom one time and wrecked my mom's car. And I had 24 hours to come all the way from Vermont, or Rhode Island, to pick up my son before my uncle was going to put him in jail because he wrecked my mom's car. And my son was only 16 at the time. So, this is the kind of things I did. And then he stayed with us for a while, and he met a girl and everything else, and then the girl broke his heart, and then he came back up here to upstate New York. But he was so mean to my mom as my mom got older. Once my mom couldn't do much as she got older, he turned on her. He took her money. And my 3 older brothers lived here all their lives. Nobody was taking care of my poor mom. My brother Carl, who I used to be close with, he owned a car dealership. He wouldn't help my mom get a car because of what my son did. They all took it out on me. Everything that went wrong with Chris, they took it out. And my brothers were jealous because they didn't have a relationship with my mom. But then when my mom came to take care of her mom, they kind of had a relationship. And then when Chris came and lived with my mom, they got jealous. And then everybody went their own ways. And then when things went wrong, I got dragged in and got blamed because, Chris shouldn't have been living there in the first place. My youngest brother, which I'm the baby, then it's Carl, Alan, then my oldest brother. Carl was jealous over me, and then he was definitely jealous over Chris because he wanted my mom's attention because he didn't get it as a child. And it just became a big mess, and my family was very cold-hearted, and like I said, we couldn't say I love you, hugs, or kisses, or anything like that. So when I came here 10 years ago to take care of my mom, because I used to come up here on holiday stuff and bring food and hang out with her because she was always by herself and she was always broke. And one day when I came to visit her on a holiday, she had nothing in the refrigerator. She had no money, nothing. And I was pissed because I was still considered the bad sibling. Even though I used to come and drive from Rhode Island to upstate New York, an 8-hour drive to stay for just a weekend for holidays or just to see my mom. I used to call my mom every day. Even though my mom put me through hell and back, I stood by my mom. And I apologize for my mouth because I have false teeth and it's just... So, no matter how hard I tried in life, it just wasn't working. And when I moved up here and took over, everybody got mad. My son got pissed because he couldn't get no more money from my mom because he was in he ended up in heavy drugs. And he didn't like that. And, you know, I did everything for everybody, and I got so overwhelmed that I snapped. Because my uncle wasn't happy that I was living at the house. He didn't want me there. But I explained to my uncle, the past is the past, today is today. And I told him what was going on. And he finally accepted me to be there and said, yes, take over. And, you know, I stood by my mom. I helped her. But I was seeing things that, you know, it made me upset. I finally opened up to her and I told her, because she kept treating... because my brothers were taking money from her, and they had their own money. They made more money than I did. They were well off because of my uncle. My uncle made their lives easy for them and helped them become rich and this and that. Except my brother Alan, the middle child. Him and I were the black sheep of the family because we fucked up. Excuse my language. So, it just was a battle, and I snapped one day. Because I was trying to get help from doctors up here because it was a small town and everybody knew me and they knew I was a good person stuff, but the doctors up here, they can't get good doctors up here because first of all, it's a small town. There's not much to do up here, and there's very, very rare doctors that you can find that are here for you. They're more into the money than anything. They'll come up here, do their residency and everything else, and once they start making that money, they're more into the money than they are into the patients. That's how I see it up here. And then they leave. You know, I had many good doctors that I love, and they left because of that situation. Because they didn't like because it was just too boring up here. Or whatever, and they wanted to make better money. I mean, the doctors some of the doctors they work for the patient, but then they leave. And like I said, every time I get close to somebody or someone, they always end up leaving. That's why I never got close to anybody. And it was hard for me to love, and it was hard for me to express myself, and that's where all the mental issues come. So, once I snapped at my mom, I finally came out and said, you never really loved me, did you? I said, I'm here taking care of you. Because when I finally moved up here, my mom was so freaking skinny. I never saw my mom so skinny in my life. By the time we moved up here and got her better and taken to the doctors, get her on the right track, the doctors were shocked. And I was still hated by my family, my brothers. My brother couldn't stand me being up here and helping my mom because they wanted to put her in a nursing home. They wanted to take her money. They wanted to take her animals away from her because she loved the animals. They wanted to take everything away from her because they didn't want to deal with her because she was getting old and she was getting sick. But that was my mom. And even though I grew up in a terrible, terrible life, I did not want to see that happen to my mom. I wanted to be there. Because that's the kind of person I became. Because I know how it feels to not be wanted. I know how it feels not to be loved. I know how it feels to be treated like shit. Okay? So, I took care of her. And everybody hated me for it. And then, when she passed away, my brother kicked me out of the house. And in between all this time, I was trying to get help from doctors. They weren't helping me. They thought because up here, it's addiction. Everybody's addicted to something around here. They didn't want to help you at all with anything except go read a book, go take a walk, take deep breath. And I couldn't explain myself well enough to tell them how bad my mental situation was and how long I've been like this since a child. Because it was hard for me to explain because I knew they wouldn't believe me. I felt they wouldn't believe me or they didn't care or, and, the therapist kept saying, well, who cares? Let them go. If your kids don't want nothing to do with you, let them go. But I didn't want that. I wanted my family to be connected. I wanted that family. I've been seeking family all my life. I wanted the family that I used to watch when I used to ride in a car and look inside people's houses and wondering, is that what family's supposed to be like? That's what I wanted. That's what I was seeking all my life. So I get called crazy. My son says, you ought to end up in a mental institution and die there. This is the way I get talked to from my kids. No matter how hard I tried, I got my son straightened out off drugs. I got him back with his wife. They ended up having I raised their first grandson because they were on drugs. Then they broke up, and then she ended up pregnant again because they were better as friends than marriage, but they never got a divorce. And she ended up pregnant, so they ended up back together. Well, they got back into drugs again. So I raised those twin girls. I changed so much. I tried my hardest without anybody's help to make myself be better. The only thing that people hated and used to call me crazy is when I tried to express my feelings and tell them when I got upset or I saw something wrong or that they didn't want to admit their own problems. So when I addressed it to them, they would turn it back on me and then bring my past up or say I'm crazy or I'm hallucinating or you don't know what you're talking about, So that's the reason why I stayed here in upstate New York, was because of those grandkids. They kept me going because that was the first time I was ever really truly loved, was through those grandkids and my husband. So, but now the way I've been treated with doctors and the way I kept telling doctors things weren't right, this started 10 years ago, and it started with the face. They fucked up. And now I'm dealing with breast cancer, I'm dealing with face cancer, and the bump on my head is related to the face because when I finally got, the doctors will always screw up with referrals, or, when I finally got my face checked the first time, which was 10 years ago, I had the spot. He took it out, and he said, well, you got another one growing, but he said, let's leave it alone. He said, we'll just see what happens. So when he took the first one out, everything went fine, But that spot got worse right after he took the first one out, which they were side by side. Well, I kind of screwed up, missed a couple appointments over the years, and then I started finding out I was having a problem with my breast. So I was more focused on my breast than I was on my face. And then I noticed I was starting to get a dot up here, and I noticed I was starting to get a bump up here. But then I had a head injury because I was riding my bike, and it was at nighttime, it was raining. I thought I was going on a sidewalk, and I crashed my bike, and I hit my head, and I ended up in the ICU for a week because I had a brain bleed. So wear your helmet when you ride a bike. They had to ship me to Burlington. I was in there for a week. They didn't think I was going to make it, but I did. I made it. I thought I was going to die, like my mom, because my mom died of a brain bleed. And it was 1 year. It was on my birthday this happened. And it was 6 months after my mom passed away. And I thought my mom was calling me. I thought I was going to die just like her from a brain bleed. So things just went down south. So the reason why I'm telling you the story is my best friend finally, that I had in Rhode Island for 20 years, finally we had a bad breakup, and she finally got in touch with me when I moved up here. I don't know how she found me, but the only reason she got in touch with me was because her dad died. I was more of a friend to her than she was a friend to me. I did everything for her, but when it came to me, same thing. I couldn't get nobody to help me or be there for me. So, but we became friends again, And when I was taking care of my mom, she's like, she goes, why didn't you start doing this? Why didn't you learn how to crochet? So she taught me how to crochet over there because she lives in Florida now. And then she got me into paper crafting. And then when I had Psycho living next door to me and I was going through all that torture for 3 years, I asked my husband, I said, why? Why is it with us? Because my husband and I have been together for 8 years now. I said, why is that people hate us so bad? No matter, my husband will do anything for anybody. He is so smart on everything. I mean, everybody wants him, but they use him. And they do the same with me. And it's like, the girl that lived next door went to school with my son. And when she found out that was Chris's mom, she kind of became friends with me, but she was a little cuckoo. And I could see it. And people kept saying, stay away from her. My son said, stay away from her, because when I started taking care of my granddaughters, when my son and his wife used to go to the rehab and everything, she used to show up at the house. And I didn't know who she was, And I told my son when he used to come back, I said, she used to walk in the house without knocking and stuff. And he's like, oh, don't let her in the house. She's a drug addict, and she's only once. Because Jess used to be, the one that knows how to draw blood and everything. She wanted my daughter-in-law to shoot her up. And my daughter didn't want no part of it, But when she found that out, she kind of weased her way into my life. But once she stopped doing something for her, oh my God, she turned on us. We went through hell 3 and back. That's another long story. We fought so hard. This town is such a fucking crazy town. If you have money and you have a name here, you can buy anybody. You can buy the judge, you can buy the cops, you can buy the dog catcher, you can buy anybody. And this girl, her name was Chelsea, tortured us so bad. She had the landlord against us when we moved here. We were good with everybody here until she got jealous that we were friends, because when she lived here on her own and she has a little boy, she was 35, she had a six-year-old little boy, she was the screw up here. People couldn't stand her. But then somehow she turned it to where people started liking her and made us the bad guy. She used to tell people I used to break in her house. I used to duct tape her son. I used to crawl through the air conditioner, cook dinner, break all the eggs while she's hiding upstairs underneath her bed with her kid and dog. I used to call CPS. They didn't do nothing. They wouldn't take her kid away. She would never let that kid play. She had a prostitution ring going on here. I used to complain to corporate, to the landlord. She used to tap on our wall. Each month went by, things kept getting worse and worse and worse, and we were calling the cops. They were trying to put my husband in jail, saying all fault. So she had this whole complex against us, trying to get my husband, saying he was trapping her in the house, or he was doing this, or he was doing that. I mean, we fought, but she was doing this to everybody that lived next door to her. I had a young couple that I knew that moved on the other side of her, and she almost lost her job because she went and complained to the landlord, saying that this girl was crazy, tapping on the wall and everything else. But the landlord knew her and her family. So he didn't want to get himself involved. So he took her side because he knew how crazy and how dangerous she was. This girl called this poor girl's job. She was a daycare teacher and said she was a child molester. This is how bad this girl was. And she kept getting away and away. I said, no way am I having someone destroy my life and put my husband or me in jail for something that we're not doing. So I started a YouTube channel because my best friend got me into paper crafting. So I wanted to do a YouTube channel to try to get my mind off all the craziness that was going around. And then my best friend and I had a fallout because of what was going on here, and I was trying to seek for help, and I wanted to get away, and she wouldn't help me, but she would help everybody else, but I was supposed to be her best friend, and da-da-da. We had no support from nobody, so there goes my mental state off the grid. I went crazy. I mean, it got to the point where this girl had my husband almost stabbed, okay, and the police still wouldn't do nothing. I had to call the police at 2:30 in the morning because her son was screaming while she was crawling in the middle of the field because she was so freaking high, okay? And they were banging on that door and everything else, but nothing because she was a beautiful young blonde and everybody was infatuated with her. So I started talking on social media and telling my story and saying what was going on. She used to have a dog. She got a dog just because we had a dog. I have emotional support dog. And the reason why I have emotional support dog because of my mental health. She got a dog just to torture us. And she got this poor puppy and left it home. This girl didn't work. She gets free rent. She didn't have to pay a dime. Okay, she had everybody else paid. Then when she found out that I had a brother that was rich, she went after him and got him to hate me more. And here my brother kicked me out of my own mother's house. Wouldn't help me. I never did anything wrong to him, but he helped out a psychopath. And still to this day, he's helping her after we finally won and got her arrested. And got the judge to listen to us and got the cops to listen to us and the sergeant and this town to listen to us because we had so many videos, so much proof of what she was doing to us. And with me speaking on social media, finally we got what we deserved. And now that she got kicked out of here finally after the old landlord left because he didn't want to deal with it no more because I was going to sue this place, another person came in who's related to her and turned on us for a while until I stepped up to the plate and called corporate and everything, told them I'm not going through this again because I will have a civil lawsuit because now her friends that still do live here because they all went to school together and even older people who shouldn't even be involved in this and don't even know us from a hole in the wall, and they knew we were good people. We stayed to ourselves. My husband works. I was always in this house. I couldn't even have my grandkids here anymore because of everything that was going on. But they knew deep down inside we weren't the ones. But now that she's gone, they tried to pick up where she left off. And I finally put a stop to it, but we still get judged here. The landlord, she's kind of okay, but she still hangs out with the crazies. Now, people call me crazy and everything else, but you want to know what crazy is what you see here. I never saw a community and people act this way. I thought my life was crazy, and I thought I was really crazy, and I know I'm crazy, but I would never, as an adult, act the way these guys did. But they hate us now because they protected this girl so bad and lied for this girl for 3 years. Now they look like fools. And then they thought they were going to do it again to try to get us out of here because the old landlord wanted to come back. But he had my counselor, who was his best friend, try to play a nice card on me. This is the kind of people I get. This is the kind of help I get. I asked my counselor for help when all this stuff was going on, and it seemed like she was on my side and she felt bad for me and everything. Did you know she was taking the landlord's side to try to get us out of here so James wouldn't leave, the old landlord? And then once James left because he couldn't handle it, because this girl called on the maintenance guy 35 times saying that he was sexually harassing everybody. Because when she didn't get what she wanted, because she was such a drug addict, a prostitution ring, whatever she was doing, it was just horrible. She made everybody else the bad guy except herself. So, once this was over, said and done, I left my counselor once I found out what she was up to. Then she had the nerve to call me a couple months ago, 6 months ago, we'll say now. Because this happened finally in October. She got arrested. She was hiding from the cops here, hiding in the house, and the state police kept coming here because of what she did to her stepfather. Because my husband got off the phone with the sergeant that day and said, just wait and see. She's going to dig her own grave. That night, she stole her mother's phone, and her stepfather came here. She did a mayhem on her father. She jumped on his back and ripped his ear off. That's how dangerous this girl was. And she had a 6-year-old son that CPS never would take away. They knew how bad she was. They knew she was a drug addict. They knew she was psycho. They knew she needed help. Nobody. You know what CPS used to tell me? What do you want to do? Take her kid away? I said no. get her the help, because this poor little boy needs a chance in life to have a normal life. He shouldn't be seeing what he's seeing. A mom who wouldn't let him play with other kids. That boy was growing up to be like me. He was being treated like I was. But his mom was with him. I grew up alone. But he was seeing guys coming in and out. He was seeing his mom doing drugs. He was seeing her having 30 people try to beat up people in their 50s on disability and everything else. This kid's seen it all. I wasn't going to let this poor kid have a bad life. I wanted him to have a chance in life. I pleaded to her mother and to her grandmother. Her grandmother would listen to me because she knew that she needed help. But her mother must have did the same thing. I don't know. But she's gone. Then we went through all this. But the landlord wanted to come back. But my counselor, 6 months ago, called me and said, "Oh, do you put applications to other places that I gave you?" And da-da-da. She was playing the nice card. And I figured it out. She was trying to get us out of here so the old landlord could come back. And I wasn't going to play that game because I shouldn't have had to move. Everybody kept telling me out of the 3 years, "Why don't you just move? Why don't you just move?" And I said, "No, I'm not moving. I'm standing my ground because I'm not doing nothing wrong. You may call me crazy because everybody here who didn't know me used to tell the CPS, 'Don't talk to her. She's crazy. She's a mental case. Her husband's crazy. He's abusive. He traps females. He does this.' They didn't know my husband. And the only reason why they knew me was because of my family. They knew who I was, but they didn't know they knew who the person, they knew me, but they didn't know what kind of person I was. And when I know I'm right, I will stand up. I will stand to the end. I will protect anybody to the end. That's the type of person I am. So that's why I started a YouTube channel. And then with the health problems and everything else, I discovered diamond painting again. And then I started watching videos and I see that mental health was coming up and people were talking about it, and I started getting connected and everything else. And now people are kind of reaching out to me, and there's people hearing a little bit of my stories here and there, but I had to get on here to tell my story. And now that my video is so long, you probably guys all left me a long time ago. But I wanted to say thank you. And I just wanted to make awareness of mental health. And I wanted to make awareness of your own health. With everything that's going on with me, I'm blaming the doctors right now because I shouldn't be having breast cancer. And it was all due because of my face 10 years ago. When you see something, whether it's a pimple, or if it's an odd shape or anything, get your body scanned. Don't hold back. You come first. I never put myself first. I put everybody else first. And now look at me. I'm sick. I'm alone. But that's why I'm doing this YouTube channel, even though it's stupid. It keeps me going because it gives me something to do and keeps my mind off everything. And I'm trying to keep myself thinking that I'm worth it. I'm worth being able to be here. And I'm doing it because of my grandkids. I don't want to fall in that deep hole again, but I am. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that's going on right now is affecting my marriage. And it's just hard because I'm doing this on my own. And the other day when I got 2 things from 2 people that barely, one didn't know me. She just heard my story. And the other one knew me because of school. And she saw my YouTube channel and she had me start doing cards. And when I got a gift from her in a card, it made my day. And I'm not asking for that. The point of that is it just made me realize that there are people that do listen. There are people that do care. So I just want people to know that I have a corny YouTube channel. I'm not asking for pity. I'm not asking from anybody for anything. I'm just asking for friends, for people to talk to. I just want to be a part of something. I'm tired of being left out. And I thought with all my problems and my disability and my mental issues, I want to fit in. And it's a challenge. And I want to prove to myself I can do this. I really can if I can put my mind to it. But I have a lot of disadvantage with my memory and my health and worrying about this one and that one, and I feel bad. I feel guilty when people do nice things for me because I'm not used to that. I'm the one that should be doing nice things to people, you know? And so that's just my story. So on that note, I'm gonna let you guys go. So if you're my subscriber, you're listening to this crazy story, thank you. And hit that like, share, do whatever you want. And if you're a newcomer, check out my channel. You'll figure out that this is not the channel. This channel's not going to be like this. Okay? It's going to hopefully be on a happier note after today. I just wanted to reach out to everyone and just give you a little bit of my background. And to say thank you for what support I'm getting. I really do appreciate it. And I'm not asking, or I'm not having, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm just here because I want just to be part of the community. That's it. I want to be part of something. You know, I want to get my mind back to somewhat normal again. Because I don't want to go into that deep depression again. And I don't want to feel worthless anymore. I want to feel good again. Because now I stop myself from seeing my grandchildren. Because after my son blocked me and called me crazy and wished that I deserve to go in a mental institution and I should die, because he thinks that I'm lying about my health issues and stuff, because he did this to my mom. He feels guilty to what he did to my mom. He ignored my mom when she was dying after everything she did. And then he played the victim when we buried her that day. You know? And when she was dying in the hospital, he pissed me off because my oldest brother Kim was there, and he took me aside. And when I came back to see my mom, because he stayed with her, he said, well, what was that? He thought he was missing out on money. He thought we were discussing about money. And that's not what we were discussing. We were discussing, should we let mom go? How are we going to bury her if it comes to that? You know? He was only concerned about money. And for him to be like this to me after everything I'd done for him, and I try so hard to be a better person and to prove to him, because he knows I'm a good person, because he would never let me see those grandkids if I didn't change. But my kids just don't want to see it. For some reason, they don't want to see it. And I just don't understand why. Wouldn't you rather see someone be better and not keep them in the past or keep them broken? You know, I just don't understand. So, this is my story. So you guys have a great day, and I promise I will not come on here anymore and give you a long story and a crying story. But I just wanted to reach out because some people are not understanding what is really going on or whatever. And I just wanted to come out and tell you my story and tell you that mental health is a disease. It's a problem, and we need help on that. We need more awareness on it, and we need to stick together. We all need to come back to like we used to be and not be so distant from each other and not to be so judgy of each other. Give people chances. People are human. We all make mistakes. Some of us learn, some of us don't, but at least if the person's trying, give them that second chance. you know? And that's what I'm trying to tell everybody. And that's the only reason why I came on today. So, all right, take care and have a great day. Bye.